House Oversight Committee, and he's our guest this morning. Good morning to you, Congressman.
Good morning. Good morning.
So now we're going to have these hearings coming up on Wednesday. So what are we going to hear that is new information, and do you believe this was a cover-up?
Well, we were certainly misled at every step of the way. To hear it from the administration, there's nothing wrong here. The Accountability Review Board has looked at this, and there's nothing wrong, and what you're doing is just political. But what we have established is, despite 4.5 months after this tragic thing, Secretary Clinton still came to the United States Congress and testified that the people on the ground made the decisions about security. That never happened. We heard yesterday, when Darrell Issa was able to release some information from the chief of mission there, Mr. Gregory Hicks, that there were serious ramifications for us not releasing, or for those Sunday talk shows, that there was a reason why the FBI took 3 weeks to get there. The president of Libya had actually gone to Benghazi, and he made statements that he believed that it was a coordinated, well-planned attack, and yet Susan Rice went out there and just totally tore that apart. That caused a huge delay in our ability to bring those terrorists to justice. And then the other thing that I would anticipate that we hear is we have consistently heard from the White House itself, from the Secretary of Defense, from others, the Accountability Review Board have all said there were no military assets that could have been brought to bear in that 25 hours. And I think what we're going to find is there were military assets, there was military personnel. They were told to stand down.
So are you saying that Admiral Pickering and Admiral Mullen are complicit in the cover-up because they did the review board? Are you saying that the CIA is complicit because they allowed their talking points to be edited?
Well, it seems to me that the intelligence community actually did a fairly good job in this. I mean, from what I've been able to see. We have not been able to uncover everything. This is not the last hearing that I think the United States Congress will hear. These are 2 or 3 very brave people who are stepping up at great personal risk to tell the world what they saw in their own first-hand account. These are not political appointees. Right. These are career Foreign Service people, and I think that's what makes
What about Admiral
so
Mullen
riveting.
and Admiral Pickering? Why would they sacrifice their reputation to put together a report that was inaccurate?
You're going to have, the media is going to have to ask that question. I mean, the media, by and large, has really dropped the ball on this. They have not asked tough questions. This was a panel that was appointed by Secretary Clinton, yet she wasn't even interviewed in this report. And so I think what you're going to find over the course of time that there are a lot of holes in what they reported, because they said the communication worked perfectly. They said there was no military. And I think we're going to hear from people who are on the ground there in Libya who will testify as to their perspective on what really happened.
Let's take a look. Here's a preview of what Mr. Gregory Hicks is going to be talking about. He says, quote, "I think everybody in the mission thought it was a terrorist attack from the beginning. I never reported a demonstration. I reported on an attack on the consulate." Chris's last report, if you want to say his final report, is, "Greg, we are under attack." So that's something from him. Also, at Fox News, we've got a story this morning regarding Hillary Rodham Clinton. Clinton and a key aide tried to cut the State Department's Counterterrorism Bureau out of the chain of reporting and decision-making and how to characterize the attacks as well. She's made it sound, Congressman, like she really had very little to do with it, but it sounds like she was doing her best to get around that, right?
Well, we have in the State Department a counterterrorism unit. There's a unit called the FEST, the Foreign Emergency Support Team. And if you go look up on the website, this is the one and only group that we have that is the interagency coordinator for disasters like this. If there's a hostage situation, if we're in peril in one of our embassies, they take great pride in that they have trained and prepared, and they have personnel in an interagency way in order to engage in this. One of the questions that I think that Congress has is, why is it that Secretary Clinton never turned that button on? They weren't invited to the meetings. They weren't stood up. When the Cole was bombed, the USS Cole was bombed, when the Nairobi incident happened, FEST was the one that was put into action. But they're part of the counterterrorism. So you just wonder if there was a political decision rather than a practical decision.
It sounds like what you've described, it sounds like there's been a cover-up. But what were they trying to cover up?
Well, again, this is why we're fighting for the truth. None of this would have come out if the Oversight Committee, if Darrell Issa, if our committee didn't continue to pursue this. We would have been told, the rest of the world, by the Obama administration, go on. There's nothing wrong here. It was just a video gone awry. So I don't know what else we're going to continue to
re-election? Was it the re-election of the president?
Well, I think it was political rather than security. But what boggles my mind is 4.5 months after the fact, Secretary Clinton still had the gall to come here and perpetuate things that we know as common knowledge are simply not true.
But Congressman, it's an interesting question because it does involve so many high-level people. You had the former Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, who was revered by both sides of the fence, coming out and saying, hey, we couldn't have gotten anybody there. So you have him on the line. You have former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Susan Rice, President Obama, Admiral Mullen. I mean, would all of these people go to bat just to get President Obama reelected?
What about David Petraeus?
David Petraeus, former director of the CIA.
Well, again, I think the intelligence community is the best I can tell, has probably done a better job throughout this than the rest of the others.
But they allowed their report to be scrubbed.
Well, again, this is what we're going to ask the chief of mission. The number two one. We're going to ask the number two person, the person who, when the ambassador wasn't there, he was the head. He was the person that was on the phone. Let's ask him. He's a wonderful, patriotic person. When I went to Libya the first week of October, I met with him. I felt that he was being suppressed in his ability to share information with me then. But now he's taken a very difficult personal step, and he'll share it in his own words, not some Republican, from Utah. We're going to hear it from the guy who was actually there.
Okay, so we're going to hear from 3 career officials from the Department of State. What about the contractors, the special operators? I think there were 7 there that night. 2 were killed, were murdered. What about the other 5?
Well, there are a lot of people on the ground that we would like to talk to, and as I've talked to several times over the last several months, these whistleblowers have had a very difficult time. They're afraid of what would happen to them at the Department of State. We think we're working part of that out, but I'm telling you, you can talk to the attorneys. They will tell you they are very difficult time getting the security clearances they need from state in order to talk to their clients.
Congressman, I watched you with Chris Wallace yesterday. Congressman Lynch, who seems to be a very sensible Massachusetts congressman, said, why didn't you let some Democrats into this process? Why didn't you?
We totally did. We're in the same boat. First of all, I went over to Libya. No Democrat decided or elected to go with me. State Department sent a minder to go with me. We have been asking for documents from the State Department. We've been given 8 tranches that we can only review in camera. That is, we have to go into a room where the State Department can watch and take notes of what I can look at. Even non-classified documents, that is so wrong.
Interesting.
I can tell you in those months, not a single Democrat has ever come down to join us. Some of their staff did, but not a single member did. But that's always been there.
I bet that could change, though, now, because it seemed in that interview yesterday like more Democrats may be coming on board now to say, oops, what actually happened here? Congressman Jason Chaffetz, thank you so much for joining us this morning to bring more details about the whys of this story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the rundown, a referee punched by a teen soccer player has now died. So what happens to that teen? Will he face murder charges? The brand new details next.
Then Justin Bieber attacked on stage while playing the piano, and boom, there goes the piano.